What happens now that Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City mayor primaries? Take a look at this clip over here with Ben Shapiro breaking down Mamdani and seeing what we might think about for the future. So we'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Violence is an artificial construction.
Death to the IDF!
And we have to be very clear that what is happening here.
Death to the IDF!
These are the people the West has imported and then trained their own children to follow. Good job, West. Excellent job. The other big continuing story of politics in the United States, of course, is the impending election of Zohran Mamdani as mayor of New York City. So Zohran Mamdani, he continues to be as radical as it is possible to be. He is sympathetic to jihadism. He is effectively communistic in his approach to the markets. He is, in fact, racist against white people. And there's no other way to read the agenda that he has spelled out publicly. He was asked by CNN, what are your feelings about capitalism? His answer was, I don't like it.
Do you like capitalism?
No, I have many critiques of capitalism. And I think ultimately the definition for me of why I call myself a democratic socialist is the words of Dr. King decades ago. He said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And that's what I'm focused on, is dignity and taking on income inequality. And for too long, politicians have pretended that we're spectators to that crisis of affordability. We're actually actors, and we have the choice to exacerbate it, like Mayor Adams has done, or to respond to it and resolve it, like I'm planning to do.
He does not like capitalism, you understand? He's in the greatest financial center in the history of the world, in New York City, and he does not like capitalism. That would seem to be a bit of a warning flag, you might think, especially given the fact he's a career useless person. He's a 33-year-old who's never held a solid job a day in his life until he's going to become mayor of the biggest city in the country and a financial center of the West. He grew up in the home of a radical anti-colonialist, in scare quotes, professor at Columbia University who's sympathetic to every form of radicalism, and an Indian-American mother who made radical left-wing films in Hollywood. That is his upbringing. Rich, privileged, as left-wing as possible, became a citizen rather late in life, and now is running for mayor of New York on the platform of I hate capitalism, and I hate Donald Trump, and also white people are bad. According to the New York Post, New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani wants to hike property taxes for, quote, richer and whiter neighborhoods. It says that in his campaign platform, quote, shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer boroughs to more expensive homes in richer and whiter neighborhoods. And now that's just plain racist and also a violation of the Civil Rights Act. You're not allowed to use the law to discriminate against people on the basis of their race, obviously. Pretty astonishing that he is saying that sort of stuff out loud. But again, he can say all of this sort of stuff because being a radical with the college-educated white liberal base is the feature, not the bug. And there's so many people who are rational, who are hearing all this, and they're like, wait a second, how's this guy going to win? And the answer is he's going to win because of this. Because the virtue signaling on the left is just that strong. It is that important to be radical. And the omnicause must prevail. They're going to elect a guy who literally said that violence is an artificial construction. Here he was, not all that long ago, talking about violence while he was promoting defunding of the police.
Oftentimes, we've even found as legislators, when we go into these courts, the term violent crime is even used when people are stealing packages. Violent crime is even used when people are accused of burglary and there happens to be a housing unit in that same dwelling. So violence is an artificial construction. And we have to be very clear that what is happening here with these district attorneys, that is violence. That is violence of the highest degree.
Violence is an artificial construction, you see. When somebody does something violent, or when they break in, or when they burglarize your home, that's non-violent. It's an artificial construction. Well, this is leading the cops to say, every cop in the city is going to leave. According to the New York Post, a New York City led by Zohran Mamdani will mean a two-pronged breakdown of public safety, crime spiraling out of control, and NYPD officers leaving en masse, according to experts and veteran cops. They believe the U-turn during the final weeks of his primary campaign away from defunding the police was just a craven political move to score votes with undecided voters. Scott Monroe, president of the NYPD Detectives Endowment Association, said, quote, the city would be totally unsafe for people who live here. I go to bed and worry about the phone ringing. I'm worried about my members getting killed. I don't want to plan any funerals, he added. If you put a guy like him in there, our people are going to get hurt. Nobody's going to want the job. It's going to put recruitment back 5 more steps. NYPD brass are quietly bracing for a potential mass exodus. I've had guys call me and say, if he wins, I'm quitting. A police source said of Mamdani, it's just weird that New York City would vote for him. I know he's not here for the police. Well, no, he's not. He's there for the radicalism. He's there for the radicalism. And that's demonstrated by how he was getting his support, which was partially out of the state of New York, largely from groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations. He's receiving support from apparently Linda Sarsour, terror supporter. According to justthenews.com, Jerry Dunleavy writing, Zohran Mamdani's relationship with Sarsour went largely unremarked during the primary race for City Hall, even though he campaigned alongside her and she called him her friend. Apparently, he embraced a nearly decade-long association with Sarsour as he rose from activist to New York State Assemblyman, and now the Democrat Party's nominee to run America's largest city. Their views on the Jewish state, law enforcement, and far-left policies have been closely aligned. Literally the day after October 7th, he tweeted, peace can only begin by ending the occupation and dismantling apartheid, and condemned Israel on October 8th. That is who he is. He is a radical, and the radicalism is the thing that people like about him in New York City. By October 13th, he was saying that Israel is, quote, on the brink of genocide, and he was arrested while protesting Israel, not Hamas, of course. And now he's pledging that if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu comes to New York, he will try to arrest him. He co-founded the Bowdoin College chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, a group that instructed its chapters on October 8th to celebrate a historic win for the Palestinian resistance. He expressed his love for the Holy Land Five. Those were the leaders of the Holy Land Foundation, convicted in 2008 for fundraising for Hamas. Again, not a shock. His dad compares Israel to the Nazis. Both of his parents have sided with the Columbia protest encampment, of course. And naturally, this means that Mamdani has earned at least a hat tip from the horseshoe theory right. They say they don't agree with his policies, but they do like that he hates Israel.
Is it because people are so desperate for government-run grocery stores, or love socialism, or love foreign-born midwits running their cities? Probably not. That guy was the only person in the New York City mayor's debate to say he wanted to focus on New York City. All the candidates were asked, if you could visit a foreign country, what would it be? And they, of course, all had an answer. I think most said Israel. Great. And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay in New York. And if I want to meet Jewish constituents, I'd go to their synagogues, their homes, or whatever. But I'd be here in New York because that's what I'm doing. I'm running New York. That's my job.
Well, he gave the right answer.
He gave the right answer. He gave the right answer, at least. And he's talking. I totally oppose his program. Just
Absolutely.
To be clear. I don't think it works. But he's talking about economics.
Yep.
And everyone else is talking about foreign policy. Why is it hard to talk about economics, domestic economics?
I don't know. Apparently they don't know how to fix it.
Unbelievable. Okay, again, saying that you oppose his agenda and then praising him for talking about economics as a communist is pretty incredible. But again, the horseshoe theory there is all about the fact that Mamdani hates Israel. And so, of course, to some of the people that you just saw on your screen, which is why they've been expressing so much support for all of the opponents of Israel that they can find on their shows. And that's kind of an amazing horseshoe theory thing happening right there, because that's not actually what Mamdani said. If you actually go back and watch the debate, he didn't say, I don't want to focus on the Middle East. I just want to focus on what's happening here. He literally said he believes in the disestablishment of Israel as a Jewish state. That's what he actually said during the debate. So that's a complete mischaracterization in order to defend Mamdani, because Mamdani is, of course, a rabid Jew hater, a full-scale anti-Semite who supports terrorism. And this does say something about the radical left. The anti-Americanism, the anti-capitalism, the anti-Israel, the anti-Jewish of it, they are all linked. They are all of a piece. It's all about destroying systems that are successful. It's all about that. It's, by the way, also linked to anti-Christianity. All of these things are of a piece. The omni-cause exists because of its omni-opponent. And the omni-opponent is the system. Capitalism, free markets, private property, free speech, strong foreign policy in the face of nefarious and evil enemies, traditional values like church or synagogue, right? Those are the things these people oppose. And you saw them in living color in Glastonbury over the weekend. So Glastonbury is apparently a giant music festival that happens in the UK, broadcast on the BBC. And at this gigantic music festival in Glastonbury, there was a person that I had never heard of, who you also probably have never heard of, calls himself Bob Villain, right, as opposed to Bob Dylan. And this person got up in advance of a band called Kneecap, which is, of course, gone out and campaigned against Israel and talked about how evil Israel is. And he decided that he was just going to call for the death of IDF soldiers. And also, he was going to shout about how the West should essentially fall. Here's what he had to say, shouting at a gigantic crowd of people flying flags for Palestinians, terrorist groups, and all the rest. These are the people the West has imported and then trained their own children to follow. Good job, West. Excellent job.
We've done it all right? From working in bars to working for Zionists. And if we can do this, I promise you, lot, you can do absolutely anything that you put your mind to. I'm telling you this. Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one, though? Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF!
This was broadcast on the BBC.
Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF! Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
So just going to point out, Hamas is not going to attack that music festival, not like the Nova Music Festival, because all of the Hamas stands are in the crowd at this one. Maybe Hamas is attending. They found some of their favorite bands. This was broadcast in living color on the BBC. By the way, it wasn't just that this human piece of dreck suggested death to the IDF. He also ran around the stage shouting, quote, "I heard you want your country back. Shut the f*** up."
Heard you want your country back. Ha! Shut the f*** up. Heard you want your country back. You can't have that. Heard you want your country back. Ha! Shut the f*** up.
Okay, that's what he said on the stage there. So first of all, great ad for Nigel Farage's Reform Party, which says, get all of these people out of our country. Great ad for them. But this is indicative of a rise in not only, it's all the things. It is hatred for the West. It is hatred for the civilization that has granted them all of their power, all of their economic might, all of their privileges, all of their free speech. Right? And that, of course, is combined with the reason why they hate Israel. They don't hate Israel just because it's filled with Jews. Of course, that's one reason. They also hate Israel because Israel, they believe, is an extension of the quote-unquote colonialist West. That is the real reason they hate Israel. So, again, disgusting and vile, but indicative of a new left-wing base that exists across the political boundaries that separate so many of our countries, but unites the left-wing base.
The reason that Zohran Mamdani winning the primaries in New York is so troubling for many in the Jewish community is because not only are the things that he himself expresses, he has support for BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. He's called for the end to U.S. military aid to Israel. He accused Israel of apartheid. He fails to acknowledge terror that's caused by Hamas. In fact, on October 8th, of 2023, meaning the day after the October 7th attacks, he essentially blamed Israel in tweets for basically causing what happened to them. And so I think part of the reason that it's so jarring and alarming for some is the fact that it's not so much that he won the primary or even if he becomes the mayor, but I think there's another element to it that people are concerned that he is not getting elected despite the fact that he has these particular viewpoints. He's getting elected because he has these particular viewpoints. And that means that there are enough people in the area that is voting in New York City that hold to these beliefs. And these beliefs are not good beliefs. These beliefs are not in sync with Western civilization. Many of them, from his far radical left communistic views of the world, his anti-Semitic rhetoric that he has said in the past, all of those are not, it's not about him. It's about the fact that he is being elected because of those things, or that he's gaining popularity with those things. It's not like, okay, they're going to elect somebody and okay, he has these flaws in there. No, this is the reason he's getting elected. This is the reason that means that the city, the nature of the city seems to be going in that direction. And this has been something that has been on display since October 7th. Unfortunately, in New York City and other major cities, you find these demonstrations by these far left radical groups promoting their ideology, coming together on the Omni cause and not promoting ideas that are particularly friendly. Forget only about not only to the Jewish community and Israel and things like that, but not in sync with some of the main values that create a stable society and form Western civilization. Something that we need to be aware of and concerned about. As a Jewish person myself, as a believer in God, and knowing the history of the Jewish people and the tremendous tyrants and people that have had much more power than a New York mayor, and the Jewish people have continued to live, have survived through it. Whether or not Mamdani will get elected or not in the actual mayoral election, that's to be determined, and we will get through it. I'm not gloom and doom about his pending election. At the same time, it is something that is concerning and is a wake-up call, something to be aware about, not only by New Yorkers, but others in this country, to sort of recognize where many in our society are, where many of the big cities especially, what their value system is. What is this omni cause? What are these values that they are championing as the mainstay of what you can get elected on? And it's worthwhile for us to do, as a country, a bit of introspection as what are we getting behind? What direction are we heading in? And I'm not fearful of the survival of the Jewish people and the triumph of the Jewish people and the triumph of New York. However, it is something that is jarring and concerning. And if there is someone that can run against and can be victorious against him, perhaps it's time for people to get behind that other person. We'll see what happens, keep you informed as things develop. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.